I was lucky, or fated, maybe, to be learning my craft at such a time I was just a boy, as all the seminary acolytes were. My stolen papers and my lies soon found me ensconced at another institution. I studied as little of the genuine theology as I could, but was as studious in observing the more worldly parts of power. I saw how the priests maintained discipline within the great cathedrals. I saw how fear and ecstasy could cow an entire population. I saw how a whispered word was more powerful than a shouted oration, at least a lot of the time. These were the last days of the old faith. Already there were panicked rumors of an army sweeping across the desert, one commanded by a golden prophet who would upturn everything and bustle the powers out of their assumed heaven. The hierarchs of the covenant began to get scared. The sacrifices became more frequent. Protestations of faith and penance for sins were made more heavily. I knew it wouldn't save them. The well was running dry, and in any case, they had already drawn too much water. I began to speculate on who this prophet was, and wondered if I could somehow align my cause to his. I was growing tired of my withered instructors and wished to be in the shadow of something with a proper sting. And then the strangest thing of all happened. I'd spent so much time with all these books and all that chanting and all those homilies on the old patterns of pain and redemption that I somehow neglected to be cynical about them. I found myself saying things and meaning them. I found myself studying, not to evade the instructor's scourge, but out of fascination. It was as if I'd been dipped into one of the inscriber's inkwells and come out stained. There was never an epiphany. I never moved from being an unbeliever to a believer, but I began to appreciate, gradually, how much I was aligned to a certain way of being. I was, you might say, a natural. I had been made for this. I remember being in the vaults of that old muck-brick temple, tending to the tapers and tasting the aroma of hot blood on my lips. I remember looking into the tarnished glass of the altar mirrors and seeing not one reflection, but a fractured four. I felt a shiver run through me, despite the ever-present heat. I was a petty thief, a minor speck within the iris of eternity, but I knew I could do things for these presences. I felt they had always been there, hanging in my shadow, lingering over my minor cruelties. The covenant was their plaything. Perhaps other institutions could be used in a similar way. So when the prophet eventually made it to our city, and I saw his impeccable profile shine out across a weeping and grateful nation of newly enlightened slaves, I was neither elated nor despondent. All I had to do was wait. I was still a child then. I would not be one forever. And of course, I met my prophet in the end up close. I saw him pass through the gates with his army of swivel-eyed faithful and recognized what it meant for me at once. He was a bigger scorpion, and I needed to get closer. He was with Corferon, that raddled old sack of skin and esoteric drugs he hung around like a stench of cut meat rotting in the sun. I remember that our eyes met briefly as the two of them made their triumphant procession through the taken city, although I suppose he won't recall it now. Back then I was nothing, and he was everything. I was the grub in the dirt, and he was the master of the world's zealous armies, standing at the side of the anointed and sucking up his slowed-off incense. It is commonly supposed that I must hate Corferon. We have become rivals, that's true, and within this grand coalition of blackguards and renegades that generally engenders bad blood, but he really doesn't make me angry. I find him amusing. He's worked so hard to keep up, to become one of us, and all he's done is made himself ridiculous. His flesh hangs within his armor like a strung-up corpse. He's kept around out of a maudlin kind of pity. I'd miss him if he was somehow taken away from us now, for our legion is not blessed with many jesters, and we can't afford to lose the few we have. Once the prophet had come, though, that was the end for the Covenant, at least in the open. We went underground, those of us who understood what things were really about. We gathered what we needed and stored it away out of sight. And, such is the way of things, it all became stronger through secrecy. Old words were hissed through locked doors, and we would mouth the ossified canticles under the ostensibly ardent singing of the new ones. They were the best days, if I'm honest, full of promise and guile and silent murders in the dark. We knew, of course, that he would come soon after that. The prophet kept telling us, and every augur and flesh sacrifice screamed it out. I wanted to see this master of mankind so very much, since I knew more than most what it would mean for the universe. I wanted to witness the creature I was destined to bring low. I wanted to see him dragged before me like a lowing ox before the sickle knife. I was never, ever taken in by him, not like so many who afterwards claimed that they had somehow been wronged or misled. I knew right from the start. I knew before he even set foot on my dry-as-bones homeworld. I knew all this because I've never aspired to be anything other than what I am. An eavesdropper, a sneak, a fertile soak-away for lies and poison. Judge me if you will, and plenty do. But we all have our places within this far-from-ideal creation. Here I stand. I can do no other.